Wish I would have known. Hi, and thank you for joining the Wish I Would Have Known podcast, or as we like to call it, WIWHK. I'm your host, Troy Vera. I'm inspired by the variety of surprise twists and turns that people have taken in their careers, and will continue inviting them to share their stories with you. Our guests represent diverse lines of business. You'll meet social workers, symphony musicians, racehorse owners, radio personalities, human resources leaders, commercial real estate lenders, filmmakers, and school principals, just to name a few. Join us and hear what has worked for them and what might just spark a fire in you. This podcast, as always, is going to be a conversation between friends and peers, nothing too crazy or fancy. We'll be sharing life's experiences in the interest of helping you grow and succeed in your current or even a new career field. Today's guest is Matt Tidwell, and he's joining us today to talk about his career journey as an elementary school principal. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, Troy. It's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to be together.
Absolutely.
Sure, let's get to know Matt a little bit better.
So my name is Matt Tidwell. I grew up with Troy for many, many years back in our hometown of Gilroy, but this is now my 26th year in education. I started all the way back in the Bay Area. And in fact, my first year of teaching was at our alma mater, the great Gilroy High School. But after that, I moved up to the Bay Area, up to Saratoga, in fact, and taught in Saratoga for a few years. And then my wife and I, after our second was born, after Sophia was born, we decided to relocate to Tucson. And that was just a family choice, so that she could stay home with the kids. And that was a choice. Also financial, because we're not going to live in the Bay Area on a teacher's salary. And we were lucky enough that my parents had already retired down here. And so we jumped off the cliff to see what would happen and to start a new life. And it's been phenomenal. I was lucky enough to land at Mountain View High School, and I taught English there for 13 years, high school English. And I taught all grade levels and all topics. But then something happened along the way where I just, my classroom was not big enough. And I jumped into administration, and I was an associate principal at that high school for 7 years, trying to figure out what kind of leader I wanted to be in schools. Did I want to stay as a high school principal and move into that position, or was I more interested in the elementary level? And a strange thing happened. It was a very lucky kind of coincidence that happened. We had a new superintendent come in, and Dr. Streeter was playing his chessboard, is the way I kind of like to describe it. He was seeing who his players were and where people were and what he wanted to do to grow them as leaders. And he asked me to join the admin team at a place called Twin Peaks K-8. And I hopped over there, and within a day, I knew I had made the right choice. And probably even shorter, I was like, oh my God, I love being at the elementary level. And there's so many reasons. And not to discount my time as a high school educator, but there was just something very powerful about the work I was able to do at K-8. And so then when this school opened up, the principal job opened up here at Butterfield, I talked to my wife about it, prayed about it. Is this where I'm supposed to go? Is this what I'm supposed to do? And I put in for it, and I was lucky enough to get the job. And now I'm starting my second year as an elementary school principal.
Great. I mean, we've had some very impactful principals when we were kids in Gilroy. I know I had Mr. Aprea and Zermano. And just, these people that, if we saw them around town, sometimes if we saw teachers around town, we might kind of like hide behind the racks at the grocery store. But if we saw, Zermano or Aprea, we would run up to them. There was like seeing a celebrity, it was so neat just to feel that connection, like he genuinely cared about us. And, they were just kind men who brought that kindness to work with them every day. And we were also just a little afraid to let them down by misbehaving or acting up or just being a bad student. So there was a lot there,
Yeah. Those were, I think, to the educators that you and I experienced in Gilroy, and many of them, I think when I reflect back on how they were as educators, I take a little bit from them in the work that I do, because I think that that innately happens in your career path and in your journey. The people that you encounter that make an impact on you in this one little path that you're on, they make such an impact that sticks. It kind of gets into your DNA. And I think about a couple of our teachers, particularly at Gilroy High School, that were just monumental. And it was interesting because I had I would say a special circumstance in that, we went to school at Gilroy High, and then, I went into teaching. And then so my first year of teaching was at Gilroy High School. And so I was working alongside some of our teachers, and now they're colleagues. Mm-hmm. And now we're, almost on the same level. And so I think about Greg Guerin immediately. Rest his soul. He was as genuine and as kind, supportive, and just warm as he was as a teacher. And in fact, I would not be here right now as a teacher, as a principal, as an educator, if it wasn't for Greg Guerin. My first year when I started, I think the first day of school was maybe 2 weeks after my son was born. And so I was having separation anxiety. I was just really sad about leaving my kid at home. And he was with Teresa, so it's not like he was with a stranger or anything. I just felt just incredible guilt about putting my career in front of my kid. I should be with my kid. And it was probably like the third week of school or the fourth week of school. I was struggling, reconsidering my career choice. Like, I don't think this is for me. I don't want to be away from my kid this much. And I called him one afternoon, and he counseled me and talked to me and coached me and had a listening ear and an understanding ear. And it really, I would not be here, Troy, if it wasn't for Greg Guerin. That guy was an incredible educator, so supportive, because first year teaching is, it's a dumpster fire. I mean, there's so much you don't learn in school that you learn by trial, like in front of kids, and just it's rough. And he was there the entire way. But I also think of, like, you remember John Sarik's dad, Jim Maya, Joan Martin.
Joan Martin. Yeah, for sure.
Some phenomenal educators, but I will say at the same time, there was some educators that I was like now colleagues with, and I went, oh my gosh, you're just as awful in person as you were as a teacher.
They shall remain nameless.
And they will remain nameless, and bless their hearts. Yes. But it was that, oh no, like, oh, you really are that way. Oh, that stinks. And, but you move on from that, and you surround yourself with the people that are supportive of you, that think like you, that or are willing to challenge you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's really the great premise about what we're doing here with this conversation and in general with this podcast, because those people like, Greg and John and Joan, those ones that just poured into you willingly and out of love and care, and they really wanted to see you succeed. They didn't use it as a power play, or Matt's going to be my protege. No, he's going to be mine.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
Let's make sure that you get the respect and make the impact that you need for the greater good. And I'm sure you've, over the years, have returned the favor. I've seen, a spark in a young educator or a TA or somebody along the way that you just kind of pulled them aside and kind of had that coaching moment. Put your arm around the shoulder and say, okay, do this, don't do that, make it your own, and help them edit a little bit.
Yeah.
As to not make any, catastrophic mistakes and end up depressed or on the news.
Absolutely. It's, and you nailed it. It's just, you love your students. You take care of your students. And I think for me, and it's always been a perspective of my path, but I try to, and still to this day as a principal, I treat children the way I'd want my own kids to be treated. And that's just kind of a principle of mine, because there is someone behind that child that is caring for them, that is loving them, that is trying their best with them, treating kids with just dignity and respect and love, and giving them the guardrails to kind of go through life. And you mentioned kind of that coaching, you find that spark in students, and like a term that I would use is helping them code, because there are experiences that students come across that's the first time that they've dealt with that thing, right? And they need some assistance. They need someone to come alongside them and just walk them through this moment in life so that they know how to do that thing and never never holding it over their heads. I think the one thing that has always that always helped me as a teacher, and it certainly helps me now, is giving kids clean slates. There's been many conversations that I've had with parents, particularly at the high school level, where kids make some serious mistakes. They make some choices that have some fairly serious consequences. And I often said, I need your kid to make this mistake right now. In fact, I'm happy that they made this choice. And parents always looked at me and like, what are you talking about, you madman? But then when I explained that if they make the mistake now, there's kind of a safety mechanism. They can rebound from this, and we can come alongside them as a team and help them through this and learn about this so that they don't do this thing again. But if they make this mistake when they're 25, if they make this choice when they're 22, the consequences are going to be more dire, and it could be more long lasting. And when you put it in terms like that, it's like, oh yeah, right. And so it's giving kids the guardrails that's appropriate for their age group to learn how to be a person and to make mistakes and to learn and to come alongside them and to coach them through those moments and help them code. And sometimes, kids had to make a couple of mistakes over and over and over again in high school, but you don't give up on them, and you just continue to come alongside them and be their cheerleader and be the person that's rallying for them, and to ensure that they always get that clean slate and that it's not something that they have held over their head, so that, that's this guilt that they're carrying around or anything like that. It's just that, hey, I'm on your side here, and I'm here to walk you through this moment in your life so that tomorrow and next year and 10 years from now are more successful than they are right now for you. Does that make sense?
I'm sure kids in that environment or that sort of track of life have safety and continuity issues at home and just in their friends and their family, whatever. And if that also is at school, that I'm sure would lead to dropout rates, even higher, instances of extremely bad decisions, crime and all these kind of things that would just send somebody off of a cliff and, depressed or worse. And that's that part that you play. I think it's good that you're a caring and loving father in your own right, because like you said, you have that. How would I want my kids to be dealt with, talked to, disciplined, tough love? We had some of those. There was a guy in Gilroy named Robert Butler. He was one of our math teachers.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Mr. Butler.
He was just that kind of guy. Like, we respected him, and he had this gravitas, and, had the joy of kind of seeing him later on, after school times, and we were in a play together, and he was just the same really neat guy who would give somebody a ride home or, throw them a $10 if they couldn't buy dinner at the team out or at the cast outing, and just made you feel good. And knew that he was always that kind of person. So I think people see that in you. Kids look up to their elders and their, the adults around them. But when you were 10, what kind of person did you want to grow up to be? What was young Matt aspiring?
So way back then, man, believe it or not, I don't know where this came from, but I wanted to be a surgeon. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. I don't know where that came from. And I remember telling my family about it. And and in fact, I think I even spoke to Alma Quintana, man. There's our high school counselor. That was my trajectory. That's what I was thinking about. So much so that I had a 4-year plan for high school of what classes I was going to take. But the one thing she didn't take into account was all of our theater friends and all of that kind of having such a major impact on my life, at least. And so I think my family was supportive of whatever I wanted to do. Just go do something, because I was the first in my family to go to college. My siblings all graduated high school, but they kind of went into the trades or just blue collar work, basically right out of high school. I was the first one to go to a 4-year and then go on to into like master's work and such. And so I think my family was just like, hey, that's cool. You do whatever you want to do because you seem to like have figured something out. I think there was several years like of my life where I thought I was going to be some actor, some theater guy. So much so that I double majored in college in theater and in English. And my plan was, as a 20-year-old kid, was that I was going to end up being an actor and doing that for a while and then going into teaching, because I had, through high school and college, just experienced such profoundly awesome educators. So I want to do what they're doing because they seem to be really happy. And so, I met my wife, Teresa, in the department, and we both had kind of the same trajectory. We wanted to do this. But that all kind of crashed down for me, which is a weird moment. I don't tell this story too often. Teresa and I are married. I think this is we didn't have kids yet. So this was 2 years into our marriage. And I got cast in my first professional show. And I thought I was just the bomb. Look at me. I'm finally doing this. It was for a professional house in the Bay Area. And it wasn't like I had some huge part. I think I had a line. I hated it. I absolutely despised the entire experience.
Was it the rehearsals and the lines and
all of it?
Politics,
the rehearsals, the people, from top to bottom, the entire experience was just oh my God, this is not what I thought it was. And I don't know what I thought it was. I don't know if it was, I was trying to think it was going to be like community theater when we were kids or anything like that. But it was just something that's oh, this is not what I want to spend my life doing. I don't think I'm going to like this. And so that switched things very quickly. And I was lucky enough that Teresa was supportive, obviously, she's brilliant. So I went back and got my teaching certificate. And so that was about a year, maybe 2 years of work, I think. And then I was off to the races. And, even though I had that hiccup my first year, I think after Mr. Guerin got me through that, and then as I finished that year and into the subsequent years, I just fell in love with my job. And I fell in love with it because, not to be cliche, because it's, you hear this stuff in movies and such, but it's you can see that you're making an impact. I'm doing something. And, and I think about kind of some of the lessons my family has taught me, particularly my parents, about just being of service, of taking care of your community and doing something that you put something back in the world. And for some reason, I did not get that when I was performing. I was it was very about me. And I didn't like that. And
well, in some ways, it seems like it was good that, the acting bug got squashed.
Yes, I'm very happy about that because I absolutely adore my career and I'm very, very fortunate to have this job. It's an honor and I take it very seriously because I've got about 550 souls basically on this campus that I'm responsible for between staff and students. And that, that's all I think about is making their lives better and taking care of them. And that's not something I feel like I was going to be able to do when I was 20 years old, doing what I thought I wanted to do then.
Yeah, the long range vision. So obviously then what drives you to grow and succeed is leaving a mark on the world, leaving your positive stamp and have some kids 10, 15, 20 years down the road say, you know what, Mr. Tidwell, showed me, taught me, talked to me one day. I watched him in assemblies and I realized, I can be fun and silly, but also, do my job. And, that's what brought me to this. So they're watching. And I think that's what continues to keep you on a, upward trajectory as an educator, as a professional, and as a peer. Are you a member of any certain associations that has helped you along the way? Do you have groups or mixers or networking that you do?
That's a good question. Throughout my entire career, there's always been a group of people that you hang out with, right? The group of people that you work with that you kind of rely on. And so as a teacher, you'd hang out or you talk shop with your teacher colleagues, particularly in the department. Now, as a principal, it's a lonely job, right? But me and my fellow principals in the district, we get together about 3 times a month for our little meetings, basically. And it's not anything like a district level meeting. It's us getting together for coffee and checking in with each other, making sure that we're okay. How are you doing this? How did that go? Just so that we have that kind of support, just because it's very particular work that we're in, right? There's For administrators, there are associations that you can be a part of so that you get like continual professional reading and possibilities for like professional development and such. And we certainly have that here in Arizona. And that's helpful. But biggest bang for my buck that I get is meeting with my colleagues and just, talking shop and sharing some war stories and figuring some things out.
Yeah, I'm sure that also turns into a little bit of a amateur therapy session because you can say, you know what, everybody deals with the imposter syndrome, or I'm over my skis and I'm just kind of winging it over here. And I hope it all turns out. Somebody can give you that advice and be just as compassionate and supportive, of you as you are with your students and the teachers who roll up and look up to you.
Yeah. And, you pay it back. And so as you move up through administration and people kind of fill in behind you, you make sure to take care of them as well. And so, there's a couple of my colleagues, this is their first year being a principal this year. And in fact, her and I share, we're part of this project that we're both kind of working on. And her and I both will check in with each other to see how we're doing. But I check in with her just to like, all right, where's the water line? Is it above is your chin above water? Or like, what can I do to help you? Just because during my first year, someone did the same thing for me. So you want to pay it back in a sense, as much as you pay it forward.
Well, there's a little bit of that accountability thing too. So as she makes decisions, that might color her decisions on, should I take this calculated risk?
Yeah.
Is this going to bear out? Is it off code? Am I going to get in trouble for it? Obviously nobody who's doing this should be doing things that are ill-advised. But I think sometimes when people are desperate to save their jobs and maybe even the reputation of the school, they might take some liberties where they shouldn't.
Because there's so many layers that just a principal at my level that are always on our mind. Like you talk about the proverbial like burners that you have, like what's on your back burner, what's on your front burner. I got like so many burners because at the building level, you're just making sure that the physical plant, right, is operational and safe for people to be on. And then there's the instructional level where you're making sure that instruction is moving forward at 7 different grade levels that require basically 7 different forms of pedagogy. There's some overlap, right? But there's things that I would do in a 3rd grade class that I'm not going to do in a kindergarten class versus a 6th grade class. Then there is the relationship piece that you have with your colleagues, the teachers, then the support staff, then there's parents, then there's the district level stuff that comes in that you have to kind of filter and like, okay, what are we doing here? Then there's students. There's the things they bring to the building every day that you have to counsel. Then there's discipline, which is sometimes probably the hardest part, right? When you're dealing with just behaviors and such, and because you're dealing with children, and it's not like they woke up that day and they're like, hey, I'm going to do something that's going to get me in trouble. It's just that they have a little chemistry imbalance and may blurt something out. And so you deal with that. And there's just even sub layers in that stuff. As a first year principal, you're like, oh my God, how do I tackle all of this stuff? And that's what's very helpful about our meetings with principals, or me where I talk to another principal, is we can talk through these things because I know that my colleague just down the road is dealing with the same stuff I am. And like, how are you navigating this? Because right now I want to bang my head against the wall. And then there's things that honestly, Troy, no one taught me. When I was becoming a teacher, this was not a topic. I think Columbine happened my first year of teaching. And certainly when I got into school to get my educational leadership degree, we had some serious school events. And that was a topic that you would cover, but no one taught me how to deal with triaging an intruder on campus and what are my steps and what do I do. That's certainly nothing the educators that we had in high school had to deal with. And then you deal with kind of the cyber element of it and how that can interplay into a school. It's nice to be able to have people that I can help talk to about this stuff because it is a lot. And it's something that unfortunately we all have to think about now.
We were talking earlier about thinking of things in a different way as it relates to the profession. So is there a certain method that you use that's not quite the norm but works for you? And you may not always suggest it because somebody can't do what Matt does, but is there something that or conflict resolution or de-escalation that you use, or just considering curriculum? Is there something that's just a little out of the ordinary that you might consider one of your secret weapons?
Super, super simple is get people around the table and chat. And I know that sounds like so basic, but when you're dealing with conflict of any nature, be it teacher to teacher or parent to teacher or student to student or whatever. It's really hard to walk that when you go to one person and you get this story, then you go to another person and you get this story, and then you go over here and you get this other part of the story, and then you try to piece that all together, and then you go back to the person and said, well, this person said this. And then you're just in this web of nonsense, and no one has time for that. And what ultimately happens is when you sit people around a table and you just chat as people, you're able to come to a very quick resolution and understanding of what's happening. And it's people immediately de-escalate. One of the things that drives some parents a little nutty that I do is they want to call and they want to complain about something that happened in the classroom. And my first question is always, well, have you had a chance to talk to the teacher yet? And there's always this pause, and they say, well, no. I said, but that's always going to be a great place to start, is to get their perspective, to see kind of what happened in the classroom as the adult in the classroom. Because inevitably what it is they want me to take what they said and then go yell at the teacher or get them in trouble. I'm not going to do that. I want you to go talk to the teacher. As a teacher myself, I always respected when administrators did that. I need to tell you the real story of what happened, because strangely enough, when a fifth grader goes home, the story changes somehow. And I need you to talk to the teacher so that we can come to a resolution. Now, and then I always say, if that doesn't work, then come back to me and I'll set up a meeting and we can all chat and we'll get around the table and we can have a conversation. And so that is my secret weapon. It's really simple. I think the other secret weapon is just to take care of people and to remember positive intent. Sometimes that's hard, especially when someone's yelling at you, but to remember positive intent, and that invariably people are leading with positive intent. A parent might be upset, but they're upset because they're advocating for their child. And that's their job, right? To advocate for their child. And God, I wish we did more of that in this world, Troy. Just remember positive intent. Beyond kind of those ways I kind of work with people, I am one of the few principals in this district that I don't rely on kind of district level people to get stuff for me. Like, I'm a very data driven principal. I believe in the numbers. They tell us what's going on. I have colleagues, and they're my dear friends, but they will go to someone at the district level and say, hey, can you pull this for me? Can you get this for me? Hey, I need this. Hey, how do I do this? And I just do it myself and I get it done. And I can get it done in less time than waiting for someone to get it for me. And then I have it in my hand, and then it allows me to be more intimate with the information that I have so that I can speak to it more wisely with my staff or with a parent or with the teacher. It's not real flashy about some of my secret weapons, but man, they get me through.
There's a guy in the data world named W. Edwards Deming, and he has a famous quote that I've actually got printed out and taped on the wall next to my desk. It says, without data, you're just another person with an opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
And, being a marketing professional, I have to justify the money I've spent and time that I've put into a campaign. That sort of thing, too, with if you put something in place, wait for it 6 months and see if it turns around enrollment rates or test scores,
yes.
The reduction of disciplinary actions. I mean, there's so many things that are hidden in between those numbers that people get the printout, they throw it up in a PowerPoint and say, ta-da, and then they just forget about it.
And that's the one thing that drives educators batty is, hey, we look at this data, we say these things about these data sets, and then we don't do anything about it. I keep things on the front burner just because that's my nature, but also by the nature of this school. Butterfield's a Title I school, and so there are specific data sets that I have to watch and monitor the entire time. I can't just say, hey, attendance was great in September, and then not really do anything more about attendance for the rest of the year. It was great in September, but it's stuff that I have to continually look at and keep kind of my staff's kind of eyes on all the time. Even so with like just test scores and achievement data and reading data and math data, that we always have to be kind of having that in our face, because we have to make very specific instructional choices based off of what's going on in our classrooms. And we can't make an educated instructional choice about moving the achievement line for a student if we're not looking at data, seeing how things are working. Because if the data shows that the interventions or the instructional choices you're making are not working, then we have to adjust like right now so that we can help that kid. Because we don't want to send that kid on from 5th to 6th, 6th to 7th, without them having the skill sets that they need, because that starts to speak to malpractice, and that starts to speak to it's not so good
or just ship them off to another school, and you're perpetuating a problem.
Yeah.
And then that person starts to lose faith and trust in the educational system. That's
Absolutely.
when those kids start showing up to school in their attitudes and their demeanor and their clothing and their friends, all these stuff changes in a very bad direction. And I think that's that constant worry that's always there. But overall, when you do things the right way, you're less likely to grow those plants that are wilting. You have
interesting. I like that.
Fruit.
So it's at the kind of the heart of what you just said is a student realizing that they're not learning, that this is hard, that they can't do it. And so if they can't do it, why try? And if I can't do it, why am I going to try to abide by the rules? I'm going to go do something else, right? And it's kind of at the core of that. And we used terms like hope and optimism in education, that students need to feel hope and optimism in their learning. Hope that they can learn something and then take it to the next step. And optimism that they can do something with it. And without hope and optimism, your kids will just throw up the flag. And I think about some of the work that we did at the high school when we talk about grading and assessing students and what happens when you give a student a grade. I think back to yourself. When you got a paper back when you're in high school, was the first thing you read all the comments that the teacher wrote, or was it the big letter in a circle up top?
Oh, of course, it was the big letter in the circle.
Because then what you did is you also leaned back in your chair and you looked to your left and you looked to your right and you looked over the person's shoulder in front of you to see what they got, so that you were comparing yourself to them. And if you look to the right and to the left and they both got A's or whatever, that ding to your ego right there is fairly significant. There is a sense of like, oh my God, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. And so we've come to really understand in the last 20, 30 years about that topic of hope and optimism and what that does for a student. And that is so powerful that it can really just drive the life trajectory of a child. It's incredible. And it's a powerful thing that teachers have that I wish more really understood across the country, just of what that means, of assessing a child and telling them what they got on this thing, right? But understanding what that really does. And when you and I were in school, it was really punitive in a sense, right? Grades were sometimes used as like a control mechanism.
So yeah, when we were kids, they would post the grades on the wall, and it just became like this shame fest for everybody who was up or down that list. And unless you have a teacher who's supportive enough to instill that hope and optimism and say, you know what, let's work together and stay after school and I'll help you study, or here's a tutor, or here's a book. Nowadays, of course, YouTube and you have all these online options, but there's still that dynamic of offline caring that you obviously seem to take really, really to heart.
Power of yet, man. It's how many times it's okay to tell a kid you don't have it yet. You'll get it, but you don't have it yet. Instead of saying, well, you got an F and let's move on because sorry, you didn't get it, but we have to move on to the next unit and maybe you'll get this one.
Yeah. And as adults, we still need that too. And that kind of goes into one of our other questions we like to ask is, what's your work language? For me, it's recognition and understanding. Pat on the back for a job well done. And if something went sideways, give me at least the benefit of the doubt and give me a chance to describe what happened. What's your work language? What keeps you engaged when you're facing a challenge?
Laughter.
Yeah.
I think humor and breaking the tension of things when they get rough with an acknowledgement and a laugh, I think breaks through a lot of walls and such. One thing that I've always done, especially as an administrator, is not to BS teachers and give them the district talk or the kind of like the rah-rah speech or anything like that, because
with the company line, they can see that.
It's just not organic. It's not real. It's awful. And they see through that in a heartbeat, and it's not genuine. And I can't be that guy. I won't be that guy. And so honesty, humor, I think are the two things that really do guide me. And I know it sounds cliche, and you read any sort of leadership book in education, and it comes down to this. It's relationships. It really is about relationships. And you have to want to invest in people and who you work alongside with and who you take care of on the daily to make sure that they have everything they possibly need to do their jobs. You got to like people. You got to like people in this job.
When you work with somebody long enough, you know something about them, a hobby, a habit, inside joke, so to that end, what's one thing that you wish people knew about you? Nothing uncomfortable or hyper personal, but maybe like a hidden talent or skill. Do people know about your theater background at work, or what's
that's funny.
That
I have mentioned it. I've mentioned it a couple times. I've talked about it, but I don't talk about it that much. I always think of that's when I was a kid, and that's like kid stuff to me now. But not to say that I didn't appreciate that time and the confidence, it gave me. But the one thing that people are most surprised about is that I'm actually very shy. Awkwardly shy, which is strange because I have to be in front of people all of the time, and I have to walk into a class of children all of the time. I just want to stand to the side of large gatherings and be unnoticed and just kind of watch the world happen. And so if I could be a wallflower and have no one notice me, that would be superb. But I'm actually very, very shy. And which is strange is people go like, but did you do theater as a kid? I went, yeah, but that was the one thing, it wasn't about me. I mean, I wasn't me on stage, and so I could break out of this little shell and do something silly and hear people laugh at me, but then go back to oh God, don't talk to me after the show. I just want to go home.
Well, that's also you control what you're putting out there. If you want to be loud and outrageous, a little wacky, or if you want to be that, serious actor or whatever, you get to control that environment. So, maybe in some ways, the authority that you carry into a room with you is a little bit of that meaningful control, saying, okay, he's here. We're going to listen to what he has to say. We're honored to have him in our classroom. Okay, everybody, Thank you for coming by, Mr. Tidwell. And that's a little bit of that sort of salve on those wounds of, oh my gosh, I am so, I want to crawl under a table right now. I want to pretend like this is one of those 80s earthquake drills.
No, it's weird to be, to be in this line of work, to do what I do, because I have to be the face of the school. I have to talk to parents all the time and teachers and kids and all of the things. So I constantly have to force myself to go do it. And it's the one thing that helps me through those moments is to be able to crack a joke and to make someone smile. If I can make someone laugh or make someone smile, then it makes it a little bit easier for me. It's very selfish, right? To be able to kind of break through the tension. And I'll do it at a staff meeting, at a serious staff meeting where everyone's, they could be tense or upset about something. And I can feel that because they're all looking at me. And I just want to crawl under this table right here. If I can crack a joke and get everyone to kind of loosen up, then I feel always a little bit better, and I can kind of talk about what I need to talk about.
Like the old sight gags when we were kids, have the seltzer bottle and whoopee cushion and the squirting flower and those kind of things. I mean, just vaudeville. It is. You know exactly what you're doing in every given moment, even though it seems like total chaos. Maybe it's a little bit like improv.
That's exactly right, man.
It's that. So when you decide to hang up the principal's whistle and put the walkie-talkie on the battery for the last time, what do you see yourself doing for fulfillment when you retire?
So Teresa and I's goal, the one thing that we've always circled back to, and we don't want to travel, we don't want to do that kind of stuff. We want to get some land and set up a home for senior dogs that are sitting in rescues to be able to live out their lives. Teresa and I and the family are dog advocates. We love all the dogs. And we've, in our personal time, we've volunteered at rescues and have fostered and done all of that stuff. And the one thing that breaks my heart is the senior dogs that are sitting in a kennel right now. I just want them to come and have a nice place to live out their lives with a bunch of love and eat all the things that they want to eat. And it's kind of what we want to do. I've got technically, I think, 5 more years before I can retire. I don't know if I will. I started last year, and so my goal was to follow my current first graders, right? But they were kindergartners last year. Take my current first graders till when they leave for 6th grade, and then to hang up my hat, just to watch that one kind of cohort go through and watch the people that become and see what happens next. I could see myself working at Costco very happily. Yeah. My son works at Costco and he loves it, and I can easily stand at the door and check people in and be very content.
Yeah, stand there in the Hawaiian shirt with your little sticker and okay, have a good day. Here's your coupons or whatever.
I don't know, but a lot of people in my line of work, they will do something called double dipping. And I don't know if other states do that, but in Arizona, you can retire from the district and pull your retirement from the state, but then go to another entity that hires you as the principal and you stay at that school. And so you're basically getting double paid, which sounds phenomenal. But I don't know, like, I do miss the classroom. I could see myself, before getting the land and Teresa and I settling down, like teach a few more years just to see if I still got it.
Kind of be that classroom mercenary, be in there and do your thing and travel around the county or the region and do it under your own terms. I've got a lot of friends who are subs that just, they get the itch every once in a while and throw their hat back in the ring. And now there's services now where it's a lot easier to be considered as a sub.
Absolutely.
Software is enabling scheduling. You just pick up the phone and always be on call, have your pager, or just don't go on vacation because you never know if you're going to get called in and you miss out on work. But I'm sure nowadays technology is really...
Oh my God, it's so different. Yeah. God, I remember right out of college, right out of when I got my teaching certificate, or in between, while I was getting my teaching certificate, I was on call to be a sub, and you never knew if you had work that day. And it was awful. Like, you didn't know if, like, am I going to work today or am I going to hang out at home and watch a game? But now subs have systems where I could take jobs that are 2 weeks from now, and that's my job. And I know that I have work that day, kind of thing. So yeah, things have changed a lot.
I don't know if you have anything hang on your walls or, sort of engraved on your mind, but what quote or saying that really resonates with you?
It's something that I say, and I share it with my staff all the time, and I share it with my associate principal all the time. And it's something that I say, it's serve the person in front of you. And it's something that has guided me throughout my life. And it's something that I take very seriously, because when someone comes to talk to you about whatever, that moment, that thing is very important to them at that time. And to give someone your 100% and to serve the person in front of you and to take care of that person. And sometimes it's just listening to a story from the weekend, but it's also sometimes it's like, I have this problem with the student. What can I do? Versus I'm having a hard time paying my bills, and it's something that I make sure that I remind myself on the daily. And in fact, there are times, because we're all human, I'll be here in the morning getting something done on the computer and someone comes is talking with me. And one part of my brain is going, oh, darn it, I need to finish this Excel spreadsheet. I need to get this email out. But then this voice in my head goes, stop that, serve the person in front of you. And it allows me to just snap. And it has really helped, particularly in this job, because you do encounter a lot of people on the daily. Like the number of conversations and questions that you get on the daily is just astronomical. And every one of those questions is valid, and every one of those moments is valid and important, and you have to cherish that. Do I fail? Probably all the time. All of the time. It's really hard to do it when you're juggling like 5 things and you've got a kindergartner throwing stuff in the room and a parent's mad at in the office, or the copier's broken and someone just threw up in the cafeteria. It's hard to serve the person in front of you sometimes when you've got all of that stuff going on in your head, but I do my best and I make sure that I always kind of come back to that. And I do that in my personal life and I do that in my professional life.
Yeah, you don't want to have one of those kindergarten cop moments where you stand up with all of your height and just say, shut up! And then,
no, you don't want to do that.
There we go.
You'll get on the news.
You're on a disciplinary review and you're having a vacation. We didn't even expect it.
A really long one.
And this has been so valuable to hear your perspective on what it's like to be an educator, a leader, a role model in your own right. And, is there something that you wish, you've shared that, Greg and Joan and all those folks have been really good to you in the past. Is there something else maybe that you wish that you would have been told about that you're not going to hold it against them, of course, but is there something else that you wish you would have been told that would have helped maybe guide an educational path or a decision in a big crucial moment?
I think it's the perception that kids have lives outside of school. And sometimes those lives really stink and they're dealing with some things. Until you really acknowledge that and learn about that, you kind of have this perception of, well, why aren't they performing? Well, why aren't they doing this thing? Why aren't they here? That kind of thing. And it's not something that you talk about in educator school, and it's not something that I recall people talking about, but it's the realization of that changed the way I looked at my job. And that was probably early on in my teaching career, but like 5, 6, 7 years into it, where this for lack of a better term, I shed this arrogance of like, I'm the most important teacher in this kid's life right now. Like, of course they want to read Grapes of Wrath and write an essay.
I'm Edward James Olmos and Stand and Deliver. What are you talking about? I am Jaime Escalante right here.
What are you talking about? They make movies about me, man. And it wasn't until that switch happened and went, holy moly, like kids are bringing some stuff to the table that I have to acknowledge and help out with. Not be so arrogant that you think that what you're teaching right now in your class is the most important thing in this kid's day. Like, they're lucky they have breakfast that morning. They might go home and take care of their siblings, and their parents might not get home from work until 8 o'clock. And so you're lucky if they even crack the book, man. I wish I would have been told that. I think younger Matt Tidwell teacher, first 5 years, would have had a little bit of a different attitude about the career, about the job. And maybe I would have grown a little quicker, if that makes sense.
Now you see it come to fruition, and that goes right into your serve who's in front of me.
Absolutely.
You're not just this power player, the most important person in the room, because you have 30 most important people in the room.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to be the most important person. And the minute you think you are, you're not a leader, because you do not have to be the smartest person in the room. I don't have to have all of the knowledge and all of the skills to do this job, but I surround myself with people that have the things that I don't. And we all work together to try to figure it out.
That's a really healthy mindset. So, I wanted to bring up when you're talking about just like your love of humor and breaking the ice, your yearbook photo thing. Are you still doing that?
My yearbook photo thing?
Yeah.
Like the one with Monique Vasquez and I?
Like you turn to the side, almost like you're yelling in their ear.
Oh, God, yes. So, yeah, so that's so funny you ask. So when I was, the latest silliness I did with that was, I was associate principal at Mountain View, and the entire English department, we're talking 20 people, asked me to be their photo if they gave me all these wigs and things. And so I took like 20 different shots of like these characters and I was trying to mimic these teachers. And so that was funny. I forgot about that was Dan Thrall. Him and I were teaching English together, and him and I, because of just Thrall and Tidwell, we were always going to be next to each other. So we could plan that. And then we started this, obviously it's been going on a long time, but we started a trend at the high school of teachers like taking silly photos and such. But yeah, that was fun. Oh my gosh, that's a good memory.
Seriously, that's really funny. And when kids get their yearbooks, they're going to flip to the teachers' pages and see who's doing what. Who's got
it's nonsense
or a funny pen or something like that.
Who is this jackass?
It's our jackass.
Oh man, those are good memories, man. Dan Thrall, he was a great teacher. He's not teaching anymore. He's an Intuit now. He's in the tax company.
Okay. Thank you for taking the time at the end of the long busy day to talk to me about your inspirations, things and experiences that molded you, and enlightening us with your experience. So
no, that was kind of you to ask me, and I'm honored that I got to talk with you, Troy, and to see you again. But it's really nice to have a conversation with you, my friend. It's been too long. It's really, really kind of you to ask me.
So great. And if somebody wanted to, let's say, get in touch with you, it's a potential mentorship or anything like that. Are you available on certain networks? If somebody were to try to get in touch with you, if you're open to it,
absolutely.
How would they do that?
Absolutely. I'm not like a LinkedIn guy I don't do that, but if you look up Butterfield Elementary in the Marana Unified School District, you'll find my stuff. You can connect with me there. Butterfield Elementary is also on Facebook, and I help curate our site, and you can contact me through there, but probably like through our district website is probably going to be the easiest and quickest way if you want to chat about something.
Okay, so I'll put a link to the site in the description. If somebody reaches out, it's great. Thanks again for spending the evening with us, and all the best to you, and keep on changing those young lives.
I will, Troy. Thank you so much, my friend.
Appreciate it.
Thank you again for taking time to enlighten us with your experience and sharing some inspiration. This has been Troy Vera from the WIWHK podcast. Join us again, and we appreciate your time.